Chala. Good afternoon, everyone. Okay. So we are starting today with the lipids. So there are four types of genetic material, organic substances, as we know. First one is the carbohydrate, second one is the lipid, third one is the proteins, and fourth one is the nucleic acid. Amongst them, lipids are the second one what we are supposed to look today into the consideration. Okay, અહીંયા જે લિપિડ ના એક્ઝામ્પલ્સ ને શો કર્યા છે in front of you in the picture are two. એક છે ઘી and the other is the oil, that is તેલ. They are the most common types of lipids which are found around us, right? Okay, by looking or by considering those two examples, the most common phenomena or characteristic feature of lipid, what we can assume is they are insoluble in water. So very first characteristic feature of lipid or the identification characteristic feature of lipid is they are insoluble in water. Okay, now with reference to this characteristic feature, why and how lipid is useful in living system, એની વાત કરીએ. Say for example, there is a cell here. There is the other cell here. There is another cell which is here. આ ત્રણ cells છે. અહીંયા બધે cytoplasm છે. This is cytoplasm. This is also cytoplasm, right? So within the cell we have cytoplasm. Cytoplasm contains mainly water. Here is also water. Here also you have water. All these three are having water as the cytoplasmic content, right? So this medium of water has to get separated from this medium of water. So you are separating one medium of water to the other medium of water. તમારે વોટરના એક મીડિયમને વોટરના બીજા મીડિયમથી અલગ કરવું છે. Understood now? Now for that reason, the substance what you are supposed to make these membrane. Fine. So four types of organic material. ફરીથી શરૂ કરું છું. I am starting it once again. Right? Four types of organic material છે આપણી પાસે ઓપ્શનમાં to make our structure. ફર્સ્ટ નંબરનું જે ઓર્ગેનિક મટીરિયલ છે that is the carbohydrate. Second number of organic material is lipid. Third number of organic substance is protein. And fourth number of organic substance is nucleic acid. Now each one of them, right? Each one of them has got certain role and responsibility to make your structure, right? To make your structure, each out of these four has got a responsibility which is separated. Okay, one has one responsibility, other has other responsibility, third has third responsibility, fourth has fourth responsibility. Now out of these four, what is role and responsibility of lipid? That's what I am mentioning now. Lipids responsibility in order to make structure of cell, right? Okay, first characteristic feature which is clearly mentioned and we know about lipid is lipid material cannot be able to dissolve in water. Water ni andar dissolve nahi tha, it is not getting dissolved into water. Okay, now the picture what it is showing here, कि आ एक cell है, this is one cell, this is the other cell, and this is the third cell. There are 3 cells I have mentioned here. A cell ni under, the cell which is having cytoplasm into these. Again, the cytoplasm into this cell and cytoplasm into this cell. These 3 of these cells are having cytoplasm inside them. Cytoplasm have water into its constituent. Major constituent of cytoplasm is water. Right? So chiefly they have water into that. Now what it means, I am separating water from the water. From one side, water of one cell to water of the other cell. And एक side है water से, बीजी side है water से. Okay, now I am coming to the other side. Is this. So this is the place which is called intracellular spaces. Right? This is called intracellular spaces. Intracellular spaces are not space actually. Right? हवा નથી ભરેલી, there is no air in between. It is also having water into it. Right? It is also having water here. So again, between these two, there is one side, there is water. The other side, it is water. So both the side, they have water. Both this side, they have water. So that's what I mean. I am separating water from water. So to separate water and to keep them aside, to keep them separated, I need to use the substance which cannot be able to dissolve in water. Right? I need to use the material to make this membrane. I need to use the material to make that membrane which cannot be able to dissolve into the water. That's what clear message which is getting passed from my side. Okay, now chapter number 8, what you already have, I think, either finished or running, which shows the characteristic feature of plasma membrane. Plasma membrane has got their constituent, 2 major constituent which are making plasma membrane. Number 1, lipid that is phospholipid and cholesterol. There are 2 types of lipids which are getting utilized to form the plasma membrane. And other constituent of formation of plasma membrane is the proteins. Right? So lipids plus protein, there are 2 constituents which are getting used to form plasma membrane. So your plasma membrane is having lipid as a major constituent. Reason, the plasma membrane having lipid, the reason it is not getting dissolved into water. Right? So that's the importance of lipid for us. So lipids are water insoluble. That's the first characteristic feature. Right? Okay. Now, being organic substance, it must be having carbon, hydrogen and oxygen. Right? It must have carbon, hydrogen and oxygen because it is organic material. Fine. One very important parameter which is given here, that number of oxygen atom is less here. હવે એ statement why it is given, it has very specific meaning. It has very specific reference actually. Now let me discuss that. If suppose a true series and true number if I would like to give to micromolecule, always first would be carbohydrate, that is sugar. Second would be lipid only. Third would be amino acid. And fourth would be nitrogen base. That is nucleotide. This would be correct order. Now this order would be based on their either simplicity to complexity. तो जे simplest most છે ને પહેલા છે. This is simplest most structural component. And this is the most complex structure amongst all these four. So જેમ જેમ તમે 1 number થી 2 number, 2 number થી 3 number કે 3 number થી 4 number જાઓ, complexity of the structure of the molecule is getting increased. વધતી જાય છે complexity. So simplest molecule is what? તો કે carbohydrate. Okay, these two are having only carbon, hydrogen and oxygen. Right? These two are having carbon, hydrogen and oxygen as their chief constituent. Amino acid, they have carbon, hydrogen, oxygen and sulfur. Nitrogen ei hoy. Nitrogen and sulfur. Here, in nitrogen base, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, nitrogen and phosphorus. So CHO containing, only CHO containing are two, sugar and lipid. Two. Sugar પણ CHO containing છે. Lipids are also CHO containing. Right? So બેયમાં કંઈક તો difference હશે ને? Right? So that difference is mentioned here. When I think about sugars, right? Sugar molecule એની અંદર જે કાર્બન હાઇડ્રોજન ઓક્સિજન રેશિયો છે, કાર્બન હાઇડ્રોજન એન્ડ ઓક્સિજન રેશિયો CHO ratio 1:2:1 fixed છે. So at every 2 proton they have 1 carbon, same at every 2 proton they have 1 oxygen. So 1:2:1 ratio of carbon, hydrogen and oxygen when I am talking about structure of sugar. અહીંયા એવું નથી એમ કહે છે. અહીંયા એવું નથી કે number of oxygen is less compared to carbon and hydrogen. Very few oxygen molecules are there. Yes.
आप दूसरी पेन यूज करो ना, ये दिख नहीं रहा है हमें.
All right. Okay. Carbon, hydrogen, oxygen containing. There are two types of substances. One is sugar, one is lipids. Right? Sugar ratio of carbon, hydrogen, oxygen is always 1:2:1. Carbon 1, hydrogen 2 and oxygen 1. So say for example sugar is having 3 carbon. Then their hydrogen must be 6 and oxygen must be 3. Right? If it is 6, it must be 12, it must be 6. Shall I give you the example? C6H12O6. And you know this molecule is glucose. Right? Glucose molecule C6H12O6. So if you can easily count here, divide these letters by 6. So 1:2:1 ratio. Clearly you can see. So this ratio of sugar is 1:2:1. Lipid do not show these because lipid ni andar oxygen are very less. એવું કહે છે. So there is a comparison between molecule of sugar versus molecule of lipids. So that's that's comparison what they have mentioned there. Now, next point of discussion for us, the types of lipids. Very carefully we are supposed to think about these types, because very importantly they are going to be a barrier in your exams. અઘરું છે ટોપિક થોડું, બહુ જાજો નહીં પણ થોડુંક સમજવું આપણા માટે. Fine. So the types of lipid, when we are saying, we are having basically three types of lipids. Three types of lipids. Number one, simple lipids. Number two, compound lipids. And number three, derived lipids. Right? Simple lipid, which has only carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, but in the form of, I repeat, either in the form of fatty acid or glycerol. So it is called simple lipid. When they have additional supportive another type of molecule, when it is associated with the simple lipid, then it is called compound lipid. Right? When simple lipid or compound lipid is passed through series of chemical reaction, dehydration, and make further more complex molecule, then it is called derivative of lipid or derived lipid. So complexity wise they are divided. Simplest is this, more complex is compound, most complex is derived lipid. So it is again based on the complexity. Fine. First one is the simple lipids. All right. It is very basic and very small kind of molecules of lipid. Very small kind of molecules of lipid, which is of two types. Your simple lipids are two types of lipids. Either it can be fatty acid or it can be alcohol. Right? I repeat, either it can be fatty acids or it can be alcohol. Alcohol usually is the glycerol. Right? Alcohol is usually glycerol, but fatty acid can be variable. Variable, that is of many types. There are many different types of fatty acids, but glycerol is single. Only single glycerol is getting utilized as the alcohol. So they have now described what type of fatty acids you can have as a simple lipid. Right? So next point of discussion for us is what type of fatty acids we are having. So types of fatty acids. So your next point of discussion is fatty acid. So fatty acids are the lipids which is having hydrocarbon chain. Number one, they have hydrocarbon chain. Okay. Where hydrocarbon chain is getting attached? Okay, it is attached with carboxylic group, COOH group, with carboxylic group. So, structure of fatty acid contains number 1 carboxylic acid group. Okay, I am coming to this diagram at the base. First component here is carboxylic acid, COOH group, right? And rest of these molecules, the entire chain is called functional group, that is R. Functional group, that is R group. Okay. If you remember the types of amino acids, I repeat, if you remember the types of amino acids, we have placed them into the different category based on variable group called R. So different types of amino acids are based on what kind of R group they are having. I repeat, different types of amino acids is based on what kind of functional R group they have. Similarly, here as well, fatty acids are having only 2 structure. Number 1 carboxylic acid group and number 2 R group. R group is its hydrocarbon chain, which is variable. So name of the fatty acid would be based on what kind of R group or hydrocarbon chain would be, containing how many hydrocarbon molecule or carbon molecule versus hydrogen molecule. So it is based on the number of carbon, and that's what 2 examples are given here of fatty acids. One fatty acid example is palmitic acid, which is this, je main tamne samjayu, palmitic acid. It is having 1 COOH group and hydrocarbon chain consists 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 and 16 carbon molecule. Right? Palmitic acid have 16 carbons. Hydrocarbon એનો છે ઈ કેવો છે 16 carbon containing છે. So let me clarify this. If I want to make fatty acid molecule, I need to have 2 types of substance. એક છે COOH group and one is hydrocarbon chain. That is R group. Right? So, say for example, carbon so COOH. R group. Say for example, I am taking one carbon, single carbon molecule, R group. So that contains hydrogen, 3 carbon. So this is CH3 molecule. This is CH. Minimum your requirement of R group is CH3, right? Okay, if I would like to add 2 molecules, not 1, 2 carbon molecule if I would like to add, then what I requires is, okay, 1 carbon, 2 carbon, then, H, that is this molecule, C2H5. So, hydrocarbon may be CH3 2 C2H4 C2H5 2 ઇન્ફિનિટિવ મતલબ એવડો મોટું ન થઈ જાય કે અર્થમાંથી સન ઉપર વહી જાય, બટ ઇટ મે બી 20, મે બી 18, સમથિંગ લાઈક ધેટ, રાઈટ? So this is the minimum requirement, this is the second requirement, and so on. You can keep on adding carbon molecule. Palmitic acid, the first example of whatsoever given into your textbook, contains 16 hydrocarbon chain. And second is arachidonic acid, which is this arachidonic acid molecule. It is containing 20 carbon, rest of the carbon which is there on COOH group. એના સિવાયનું COOH group સિવાયનું it is having 20 more carbon. So total carbon નથી ગણવાના તમારે આના. Total carbon ગણશો તો 17 આવશે આના. But one carbon belongs to carboxylic acid group. Rest of the other R group you are supposed to count, and that will come to 16 here, that will come to 20 here. So do not misunderstand into number of carbon which is given into the example and number of carbon which is given into the your theoretical part. So that's why I have specified this to avoid these misconceptions. Okay, next point of discussion for us would be classification. Types of fatty acids. Types of fatty acids, right? Which is based on whether they are saturated or not. So one is saturated fatty acid, and the other is unsaturated fatty acids. Yes?
पिछली वाली स्लाइड फिर से रख सकते हो?
Sorry?
पिछली वाली स्लाइड फिर से रख सकते हो?
कहाँ से आ रही है आवाज?
पोरबंदर।
पोरबंदर। ओके। यस, इसमें क्या फिर से करूं? कौन सा वाला पार्ट फिर से करूं?
एरोनिक एसिड।
कौन सा वाला पार्ट फिर से करूं भैया?
सेकंड एसिड ना, वो भी एक बार फिर से सेकंड एसिड.
Second acid is arachidonic acid, which is containing 20 carbon into its hydrocarbon chain. 20 carbon containing hydrocarbon chain. बस उतना ही है उसमें, nothing else. Say for example, यहाँ पे ये जो हाइड्रोकार्बन चेन है, यहाँ पे हमने देखा कि it is having 1, 2, 3, 4, 16 carbon in this one, that is palmitic acid. ये है एरेकिडोनिक एसिड, जहां पे आपको ये कार्बन अगर यहाँ पे दिए नहीं है एक्चुअली, इसलिए मैंने काउंट नहीं किया है उसको, because it is not given into the diagram. But when you count it, it comes to 20 carbon into the hydrocarbon chain, right? So that's what I have discussed there. So there are two things. Palmitic acid contain hydrocarbon which consist 16 carbon, and the arachidonic acid contains the hydrocarbon chain which have 20 carbon into its chain. Ready? लास्ट में मैंने जो पॉइंट बताया वो ये पॉइंट था कि आपको ये कार्बन को काउंट नहीं करना है. ये जो कार्बन है ना यहाँ पे, that carbon you are not supposed to count when you are counting the total number of carbon. ये total number of carbon है. ये जो 16 ये दिया है 16 and ये दिया है 20, ये सिर्फ R ग्रुप को दिया है, R ग्रुप के कार्बन को दिया है. COOH के कार्बन को वहां पे नहीं दिया है, वो 16 + 1 होता है. सो टोटल नंबर ऑफ कार्बन यहाँ पे आप गिनोगे ना तो वो 17 आएगा. बट यहाँ पे दिया है वो 16, वो हाइड्रोकार्बन चेन के कार्बन का नंबर दिया है. दैट्स व्हाट आई वाज स्पेसिफाइंग एक्चुअली. तो वहां पे आपको वो नहीं करना है मिसकंसेप्शंस. बराबर है? ओके, एनी अदर डाउट बेटा?
हाँ सर.
ऑल राइट. फाइन. मैं बोल रहा था सेचुरेशन और नॉन सेचुरेशन के बारे में. सो सेचुरेटेड हम किसको बोलेंगे? जहां पे पेट भर गया है. से फॉर एग्जांपल अभी की बात करते हैं. अभी 5 मिनट पहले पोरबंदर से ऐसा बोला कि हमको ये समझ, दैट इज अनसेचुरेशन. व्हेन यू हैव सर्टेन थिंग्स व्हिच इज अनक्लियर्ड. से फॉर एग्जांपल भूख की बात करता हूं. लेट मी टॉक अबाउट आवर भूख. राइट, हम जब भूखे होते हैं, से फॉर एग्जांपल 12:30 बजे होते हैं और जब लंच ब्रेक का टाइम है, एंड व्हेन वी ओपन द लंच बॉक्स एंड પહેલા જો નિવાલા હોતા હે ના ફર્સ્ટ કોળિયો, ઈ જે તમે ખાઓ અને તમને જે મોજ આવે, આમ યુ ફીલ લિટરલી કે મોજ આવી ગઈ આમ. પછી સે ફોર એક્ઝામ્પલ પહેલો કોળિયો ખાધો, બીજો કોળિયો ખાધો, પહેલા નિવાલા ખાયા, દૂસરા નિવાલા ખાયા, લેટર ઓન વોટ્સો એવર યુ આર ઈટિંગ will satisfy your need of your stomach, right? So at the end होगा क्या पता है? Your भूख will be no more. But your lunch box must have something which is left over. घर जाएंगे तो घर पे डांट खानी है, राइट? तो उससे अच्छा है खाना तो पड़ेगा. सो लास्ट निवाला जो होगा ना, जो आप अपने मुंह में डालने वाले हो, वो आप अनवांटेडली डालोगे. वो धक्का ही देना है आपको, सिर्फ आपकी इच्छा नहीं है. सो यू आर सेटिस्फाइड देयर बिकॉज यू हैव इनफ विथ योर फूड. सो उसको बोलते हैं सेचुरेशन होना. जब आपने टिफिन खोला था, आप भूखे थे, अनसेचुरेटेड थे. लेकिन आपने जब लास्ट निवाला खाया ना, तो आप सेचुरेटेड थे. आपकी भूख ऑलरेडी मर चुकी थी. दैट्स व्हाट आई मीन. अब यहां पे स्ट्रक्चर ऑफ लिपिड में तो भूख को नहीं ले सकता ना मैं. आई कैन नॉट कंपेयर इट विद भूख, राइट? सो हियर व्हाट आई नीड टू कोरिलेट इज when I carefully observe the hydrocarbon chain. I repeat, when I carefully observe the hydrocarbon chain. If hydrocarbon chain contain all the carbon with single bonds. I repeat, all the carbon with single bond. Means there is no double bond, there is no triple bond. Then it is called saturated fatty acids. It is called saturated fatty acids. Say for example, again, old one, palmitic acid. There is all single bonds. હવે તમે પાછા એમ ન કહેતા કે અહીંયા છે ઈ ડબલ બોન્ડ છે. It is not hydrocarbon chain. Please correct yourself. COOH હાઇડ્રોક્સિલ એની અંદર ડબલ બોન્ડ છે, પણ હું એને ક્યાં, હું તો R ગ્રુપને કન્સિડર કરું છું. I am considering only hydrocarbon chain. So when hydrocarbon chain has only single bonds, no double bond, no triple bond, then it is called saturated fatty acid. I hope I am very clear with this, right? And unsaturated કોને કહેવાના? Who is or what is unsaturated fatty acid? So when I clearly observe the hydrocarbon chain here, if you see here, there is a double bond. So if hydrocarbon chain is having one double bond, two double bond or triple bond, then it is called unsaturated fatty acid, right? It is called unsaturated fatty acids. મવા સેન્ટરમાં કોઈ બેઠું છે ત્યાં ક્લાસરૂમમાં? ઓબ્ઝર્વર કોઈ છે ક્લાસરૂમની અંદર? મહુવા સેન્ટર ક્લાસરૂમની અંદર કોઈ ઓબ્ઝર્વર છે કે નથી? અનમ્યુટ થઈને જવાબ આપો ફટાફટ. છે કોઈ ઓબ્ઝર્વર? એમ પૂછ્યું મેં, જવાબ આપો. નથી તો એટલા માટે તમે વાતો કરો છો? એટલા માટે તમે વાતો કરો છો કે કોઈ ઓબ્ઝર્વર નથી ત્યાં?
સર આપણે ઓફ થઈ ગયું છે ને એટલા માટે પ્રોજેક્ટર ઓફ થઈ ગયું.
ઓકે, fine. Unsaturated fatty acids are the fatty acids which have either single or double bond or triple bond. So when you have more than one single bond, only single bond, then it is saturated, and no single bond, either double or triple, એ એક હોય, બે હોય કે મલ્ટિપલ હોય, it is unsaturated. Now importantly, what you are supposed to remember here is example of saturated fatty acid and examples of unsaturated fatty acids. તમને એક્ઝામમાં જે નડશે એ આ નડશે, એક્ઝામ્પલ ઓફ ઈચ. મીનિંગ ખબર પડી જશે, ઇઝી છે, પણ એક્ઝામ્પલ યાદ રાખવા અઘરા પડશે. ઇટ ઇઝ હાર્ડ ટુ રિમેમ્બર. સો સેચ્યુરેટેડ ફેટી એસિડ્સ એક્ઝામ્પલ્સ આર પામિટિક એસિડ એન્ડ સ્ટીઅરિક એસિડ. I repeat, palmitic acid and stearic acids are the example of saturated fatty acids. Unsaturated માં એક તમે જોઈ લીધું છે, એ છે arachidonic acid, and other is oleic acid. Oleic acid and arachidonic acid are unsaturated, and palmitic acid and stearic acid, they are saturated fatty acid. Now, with reference to their name and their chemical structure or chemical formula, જો possible હોય તો હું આ મટીરિયલ તમને મોકલાવીશ, રાઈટ? યુ વિલ બી ગિવન ટાઈમ કે તમે એને નોટ ડાઉન કરી લ્યો. અત્યારે કદાચ ન થાય, તમને હું ટાઈમ નથી દેતો, આઈ નો ઇટ, બટ આઈ વિલ સેન્ડ ઇટ ઓનલાઈન. It will be available to your center. Your center will provide you and you are supposed to note it down. Right? So that facility I can give it to you. So that way you will get everything into the consideration to make a note. તમારે જે બી નોટ બનાવવાની છે તો you can make it. But carefully remember, palmitic acid નું સ્ટ્રક્ચર આગળ આપેલું જ છે. Palmitic acid is given. બીજું આ જો કેમિકલ ફોર્મ્યુલા છે, આની કેમિકલ ફોર્મ્યુલા બેની છે. Please do remember these all chemical formulas which are given here. It will be useful for your MCQ solutions. એમાંથી question આવશે જો, right? Because it is chemical, because it is hard to remember, because it is very confusing, the questions will be generated from this kind of concepts. So that was the story about fatty acid. Now the story comes to glycerol, alcohol. Alcohol usually whatsoever found into the simple lipid is the glycerol. ઓકે, સ્ટ્રક્ચરલી ગ્લિસરોલ કેવી રીતના બન્યું એની વાત કરું. કાર્બન 1 2 3 Now which structure is this? It is C3H8. C3H8. It is called methane. ખબર છે ને આને શું કહેવાય? મિથેન કહેવાય. Right? Or else I can note it down like CH3 CH2, CH3. Right? Okay. Now, I am removing this hydrogen from here. I am also removing hydrogen from here, and I am also removing hydrogen from here and replacing them with hydroxyl or alcoholic group.
Sir,
Yes, sir.
propane is
Oh, sorry. My mistake. Okay. So I am replacing hydrogen with alcoholic group. That is OH group. So 1 OH, 2 OH, and 3 OH. I am adding 3 OH here. Right? So this was previously the propane, but now I have already added 3 molecules of hydroxyl group. So it is now converted into trihydroxypropane. Right? It is converted into trihydroxypropane. So chemical name of this molecule is also trihydroxypropane. Fine. Okay. Now comes 1, 2. First is fatty acid. Second is glycerol. So with that respect, simple lipids are divided into 3 subcategories. 1, made up of only fatty acid. So fatty acids are all simple lipid. Second, made up of only glycerol. So glycerol itself is kind of simple lipid, and there are many made up of the fatty acids plus glycerol. So this is important for us now. This structure, third type of the simple lipid, which contains combination of these 2 molecules, fatty acids plus glycerol. Right? એટલે આપણે હવે ઈ point of view ને સમજવાનો છે કે sometimes many simple lipids are there which are carrying both of these molecules. Okay. Now ઈ જ્યારે combination કરવાની વાત આવે, right? Combination કરવાની વાત આવે ત્યારે you have glycerols and you have fatty acids. Usually, glycerol used to be single molecule, 1 glycerol. So, it is CH2OH, here CHOH, and here CH2OH. This is glycerol molecule. Right? It is the 1, 2, and 3 molecules of alcohol. Okay. Now, when I need to add fatty acids, when I need to, combine this fatty acid with glycerol, I requires 3 molecules of fatty acid. Do remember. I requires 3 molecules of fatty acids. 1 glycerol, 3 fatty acids. Reason is fatty acid which have C, O, OH and R group. R group, that is hydrocarbon chain. Right? એટલે મેં fatty acid number 1 અહીંયા R1 લખ્યો છે. COOH, that is R2, and COOH, that is R3. So these are the 3 molecules of fatty acids. One fatty acid is going to attracted or joined towards the first carbon, second with the second carbon, and third fatty acid would join third carbon. So when you have 1, 2, 3 OH, these OH will be replaced and this fatty acid molecule is going to attach there. So you have 3 OH group, and that is the reason why you require 3 fatty acids here. So when you combine 1 glycerol with 2 fatty acids, the molecules which is made out of these is called triglyceride. Triglyceride molecule. So formation of triglyceride is this. Okay. Now when triglyceride is getting synthesized, point to be noted with serious note, 3 fatty acid એકની હારે joint નહીં થાય. Not all 3 are getting connected simultaneously. No, it is getting attached one by one. So chemical bond between first fatty acid and first number carbon would be first. Then comes the second fatty acid and it is going to be attached with the second carbon. And then comes the third fatty acid and it is going to connect with the third carbon. So it is sequential process. I repeat, it is sequential process. So when first fatty acid joined with the glycerol, it is called monoglyceride. આ કેવું છે? Tri, because 3 attach થયા છે. So first જ્યારે fatty acid join થાય, it is called monoglyceride. Second જ્યારે attach થાય, it is called diglyceride. And third જ્યારે attach થશે, it is called triglyceride. So that's how you are supposed to remember these. It is given here, nothing to worry. Everything is mentioned here, right, in this slide. So fatty acids are esterified. Esterified, that is a chemical bond to be, say for example, there is a fatty acid. This is the fatty acid and this is the glycerol. So when fatty acid is attaching to the glycerol, the chemical bond, what they are forming, this chemical bond is called ester bond. I repeat, the chemical bond what they are making is called ester bond. And that's why this process is called esterification process. Right? It is esterification process. So what they have mentioned here is this is the fatty acid molecule. Fatty acid molecule. This is the glycerol molecule. This is the first number carbon where there is the attachment. So it is COOH group of fatty acid. And this is the hydroxyl group, alcoholic group of this glycerol molecule. That's where the combination, that's where the attachment it is going to provide it, right? So બેયના OH group છે એની વચ્ચે આ attachment થશે. This is OH group of fatty acid. This is OH group of glycerol, and this 2 OH group is going to be combined, where there is a loss of entire OH here and there is a loss of 1 H from here. So H2O, water molecule will be released here. Water molecule will be released here. So whensoever there is a bond formation between glycerol OH and fatty acid OH, there will be one water molecule which is getting lost. So it would be that reaction, and it is the chemical bond which is formed, and that chemical bond is ester bond. That chemical bond is ester bond. So this is where the ester bond is going to form. So why it is called ester bond? There is a very specific condition where there is carbon, oxygen and carbon. These kind of chemical bond you see, it is called ester bond. Carbon, oxygen, carbon bond. It is here. Here it is mentioned. Carbon, oxygen, carbon bond. Ester bond. Right? Okay. So fatty acids are esterified with glycerol through ester bond, forming first જ્યારે attach થાય forming monoglyceride, second જ્યારે join થાય diglyceride, and third જ્યારે join થશે triglyceride. So this one monoglyceride R1 join થયો, first position of the carbon. This is diglyceride, second join થયો, second number na carbon ઉપર, and this is triglyceride. 1, 2, 3, all three are joints, triglyceride. So this is 1, 2, 3 monoglyceride, diglyceride, triglyceride. So monoglyceride is having one glycerol, one fatty acid. Diglyceride, one glycerol, two fatty acid. Triglyceride, one glycerol, three fatty acid. It is written here, right? Say for example, one glycerol, one fatty acid, monoglyceride. One glycerol, two fatty acids, diglyceride. One glycerol, three fatty acids, triglycerides. So that way you are supposed to remember this as well. The chemical bond which is formed here is the ester bond, and process what we are to be remembered is the esterification process. Fine. Triglyceride structure is explained as I said. Okay, 1, 2, 3 carbon of this glycerol contains 1, 2 and 3 fatty acids successively. That is the reason why it is called triglyceride. Triglyceride is commonly found around us. मैं तमने जे सौथी पहला एग्जाम्पल 2 शो કર્યા था, जो एग्जाम्पल मैंने सबसे पहले शो किए थे आपको, that is oil and ghee, right? Oil and ghee. Okay, lipids whatsoever stored majority of the time inside the plant is in the form of oil, and whatsoever lipid which are stored in animals, they are in the form of fat. Oils are stored form of lipid in plants, and fat are stored form of lipid in animals, and they both are triglycerides, right? They both are triglycerides. So हमारे आजू बाजू में अपनी आसपास जे पण फैट्स, जो फैट्स એટલે આપણી અંદર હોય, એનિમલ ની અંદર, जो एनिमल के अंदर होता है लिपिड, वो फैट होता है. प्लांट ની અંદર હોય, जो प्लांट्स के अंदर होता है, वो ऑयल होता है मेजॉरिटी ऑफ द टाइम. इट डज नॉट मीन वी डू नॉट हैव ऑयल. स्किन में से अभी निकल रहा है ना, ऑयल है वो. So we do have oil, but majority of our content of storage lipid is fat, right? So do understand that way. Okay, one more kind of lipid which is not mentioned here, and that is wax. WAX, wax, right? Wax is found in both plants and animals. हमारे ईयर में से निकलता है वैक्स, ईयर वैक्स, राइट? सीबम निकलता है कहीं से, सीबम, सीबेशियस ग्लैंड में से सीबम निकलता है. ओके, प्लांट के ऊपर, जो से फॉर एग्जांपल इफ यू नोटिस, आप कोई भी प्लांट का पत्ता ले लेंगे, उसके ऊपर आप अगर पानी डालोगे, पानी विल बी स्लीप्ड आउट. वो रहेगा नहीं, रिटर्न नहीं करेगा, पानी को स्लीप कर देगा, बिकॉज इट इज हैविंग वैक्सी लेयर ऑन टू इट. सो प्लांट ऑल्सो डू हैव वैक्स. वी ऑल्सो डू हैव वैक्स. वैक्स जो है ना उसमें एक अल्कोहल होता है, राइट, एंड एक ही फैटी एसिड होता है. दैट इज द कैरेक्टरिस्टिक फीचर ऑफ वैक्स. ओनली यू आर सपोज टू रिमेंबर. अगर कहीं पे आया तो की बात है, अदरवाइज यू आर नॉट सपोज टू रिमेंबर दिस एनीवे. आएगा नहीं, अगर दिया नहीं है तो दिया नहीं है, सो नोट आएगा नहीं आपके, है ना. सो डोंट वरी अबाउट दैट. So that's what this story about. These triglyceride, two types of triglyceride we are supposed to remember. एक है fat, right? Fat and दूसरा है oil. अब इन दोनों को डिस्टिंग्विश कैसे किया, कैसे उन्होंने सेपरेट किया इन दोनों को? इट इज बेस्ड ऑन द मेल्टिंग पॉइंट, राइट. ऑयल रिमेन्स इनटू द लिक्विड स्टेट इन द नॉर्मल टेम्परेचर रेंज बिकॉज उसका मेल्टिंग पॉइंट लो है, राइट. अगर उसी आप ऑयल को रेफ्रिजरेटर में रख दोगे तो वो क्या हो जाएगा? सॉलिड हो जाएगा, सॉलिडिफाई हो जाएगा, राइट. एंड उसी को अगर आप रूम टेम्परेचर पे रख दोगे तो वो मेल्ट हो जाएगा. હમણાં શિયાળો આવશે એટલે ધીમે ધીમે ઓલા હેર ઓઇલ જામી જશે, है ना. કોપરેલ જે हेयर ऑयल તમે નાખો છો वो सॉलिडिफाई हो जाएगा, जाम जाएगा मस्ती का. तो रीजन इज कि इट इज ऑलरेडी એનો નેચર એવો જ છે. નેચર ऑफ दैट लिपिड इज टू बिकम सॉलिड, बट उसका मेल्टिंग पॉइंट जो है बहुत लो है, सो इट विल बी मेल्टेड विद इन योर रूम टेम्परेचर, इसलिए वो लिक्विड स्टेट में है. सो प्लांट बेस्ड लिपिड्स आर इनटू दी with the low melting point, and that's why they are remain usually into the melted state or into the liquid state, right. So oils, they have low melting point. Fats, they have high melting points. So triglyceride are of two types. Plant based, they are oil. Animal based, they are fats. Okay. Second is compound lipid. Okay, now once again, lipids. Simple lipid contains only the alcohol plus fatty acids. Compound lipid, they have number one, simple lipid plus non-lipid part. Non-lipid molecule. So any simple lipid, say for example triglyceride. Plus non-lipid, I am adding phosphate. Now it comes to phospholipid, right? Phospholipid, you know, it is found in your formation of plasma membrane. Plasma membrane na formation ma kon છે? Phospholipid. So phospholipid includes phosphate plus triglyceride, right? It is including phosphate plus triglyceride, right? So triglyceride plus phosphate, it is called phospholipids. Okay. Simple lipid, I am keeping it as triglyceride, and non-lipid part I am keeping it glucose. So it is combination of glucose and triglyceride. I repeat, it is combination of glucose and triglyceride. Now it is called ग्लाइकोलिपिड. नाम शायद भूल से सुना हो तो, राइट. चैप्टर नंबर 8, Chapter number 8, Golgi complex. Last point, function of Golgi complex. It is responsible for the synthesis of glycolipids and glycoproteins. એવું લખેલું છે. If you carefully observe કે એમાં હું લખેલું છે then. Right? તો એ ગ્લાયકોલિપિડ છે. Okay. If I keep triglyceride and combine it with protein, now it is called lipoprotein. So these three are the example, classic example of compound lipid. Now amongst these only phospholipid is given. Only phospholipid is given. So there are the ester of fatty acid and alcohol with additional group. Additional group એટલે non-protein ભાગો એમાં. Something which is not lipid. Right? Something which is not lipid. Non-lipid part હોય એની અંદર. Example, phospholipid which is fatty acid plus glycerol plus phosphate. 3. So this is non-lipid part. Phosphate. It is non-lipid part. Right? They are found in the cell membrane structure, and the lecithin is the classic example what they have shared in the textbook. Even structure of lecithin they have given in the textbook. Right? And this is the structure of lecithin. So this is the glycerol molecule. Right? 1, 2, and the third carbon is here. Okay. This is fatty acid number 3. Fatty acid number 3 contains phosphate. એટલે lipid, phosphate, phospholipid. But additional R group છે ને, that is specialized and which is giving these name as lecithin. Lecithin નામ જે આ third number ના એને fatty acid છે એના ઉપરથી પડ્યું છે, lecithin. So you are supposed to remember this chemical structure even here with not only name but also the chemical structure. Right? Because it is given in the textbook and your textbook would be referred to as your Bhagavad Gita here. So that's lecithin for you, and they are generally found in the formation of your plasma membrane. This is the same diagram which is given into your chapter number 8. Right? Plasma membrane નું structure છે એની અંદર આ diagram છે. Now comes third category of types of lipid. So પહેલું છે simple lipid, બીજું છે compound lipid, and the third one is lipid number 3 is derivative. Either simple lipid or compound lipid. એની ઉપર chemical reaction થાય. Right? There is a chemical reaction, and that chemical reaction is hydrolysis kind of chemical reaction. I repeat, hydrolysis kind of chemical reaction. So when any simple lipid or compound lipid is processed through hydrolysis, then it is converted into derivative of lipids. Usually, derivatives of lipids are most complex kind of lipids. Derivatives of lipids are most complex kind of lipids. Okay, simple ની જરૂર ક્યારે પડે? ટ્રાઇગ્લિસરાઇડ ની જરૂર ક્યારે પડે? કમ્પાઉન્ડ ની જરૂર ક્યારે પડે? અને આ ડેરિવેટિવ્સ ની જરૂર ક્યારે પડે? So it is based on its own function. Say for example, હું જ્યારે ટ્રાઇગ્લિસરાઇડ ની વાત કરું, so ટ્રાઇગ્લિસરાઇડ ની જરૂરિયાત શું હતી? એ એમાં ઇનડાયરેક્ટલી તમને આપેલું. It is indirectly mentioned કેવી રીતના મેન્શન કરેલું છે તો કે ઓઇલ અને ફેટ. So it is indirectly mentioning it is a storing part of lipid. So when you are supposed to store the lipid, you are supposed to convert them into triglyceride, that is either fat or oil, and you can store it. So storage format કરવું હોય તો શું કરવું પડે? ટ્રાઇગ્લિસરાઇડમાં ફેરવવા પડે. હવે સપોર્ટિવ રોલ આપવો છે, સ્ટ્રક્ચરલ રોલ આપવો છે લિપિડને, લિપિડનું સ્ટ્રક્ચર બનાવવું છે. Then you are supposed to convert it into compound lipid, right? જ્યારે સ્ટ્રક્ચરલ રોલ આપવાનો છે એને, ત્યારે એને તમારે કન્વર્ટ કરવું પડે છે ફોસ્ફોલિપિડમાં, ગ્લાયકોલિપિડમાં, લિપોપ્રોટીનમાં, એટસેટ્રા. ઓકે, નાવ કમ્સ શું કામ તમારે ડિરાઈવ કરવું પડે, ડેરિવેટિવ લિપિડ શું કામ બનાવવું પડે? ઓકે, you have or you must have heard about hormone, word hormones, right? So hormones are the chemical structures which are controlling and coordinating your physiological functions and metabolism. I again repeat, the hormones of your body are responsible for control and coordination of your body functions like your normal physiological functions and your metabolisms. Now control coordination no meaning અત્યારે સમજાવવા જઈશ તો સાંજ પડી જશે. So we are not discussing much into that. But one thing I must explain here is they are very complex role. Right? They are very complex role. And there are many different categories of hormones. I repeat, there are many different categories of the hormone. Amongst them, one is steroid hormone. Steroid. नाम सुना है कभी किसी ने? Steroid. Thumbs up. Steroid. All right. Okay. आज सुना अभी? Thumbs up. आज सुन लिया ना अभी? स्टीरॉइड.
स्मूथ एंडोप्लाज्मिक रेटिकुलम से बनता है.
All right. Smooth endoplasmic reticulum. Yes. Exactly right. Smooth endoplasmic reticulum is the site of synthesis of the steroids. So that steroid is derived lipid and that is getting secreted there. Good coordination. सुना हो, याद किया, बहुत ही बड़ी बात है. गुड, राइट? ओके, नाउ फॉर अस कॉम्प्लेक्स रोल थी ने એટલે કોમ્પ્લેક્સ સ્ટ્રક્ચર બન્યું. ધેટ્સ વોટ યુ આર સપોઝ ટુ રિમેમ્બર. ઇટ ઇઝ અ કોમ્પ્લેક્સ રોલ એન્ડ ધેટ્સ વાય ઇટ ઇઝ અ કોમ્પ્લેક્સ સ્ટ્રક્ચર. સો ડિરાઇવ્ડ lipids are usually steroids. Derived lipids are usually steroids. Now the component which is not given here in the books, right? Derived lipid, steroid are of two types. Again, plant steroid are different and animal steroids are different. So one is plant based, one is animal based. Whatsoever are synthesized in plant, it is called sterols. And animal synthesizes sterone. આ LES છે, આ NES છે, sterols and sterones. Example here, cholesterol, example here, testosterone, progesterone, etc. Right? So steroids are different in both the kind of organism, plant and animals. બેયમાં હોય. Plant also synthesizes steroids or derivative lipid, and animal also synthesizes this steroid, that is derived lipid. બેય બનાવી શકે આ. Understood? So બનાવે કઈ રીતના? Through the hydrolysis of simple or compound lipid. So example અહીંયા directly આપી દીધું છે cholesterol, but I have made them little bit into the more considerable points. So the example which is cholesterol is plant-based steroid, and it is the sterol type of steroid, and animal also synthesizes their own. પણ એને સ્ટેરોલ નહીં કહેવાનું, સ્ટેરોલ ન કહેવાનું. ઇસ્ટ્રોજન છે, પ્રોજેસ્ટેરોન છે, ટેસ્ટોસ્ટેરોન છે, ધોઝ આર ધીઝ એનિમલ સ્ટીરોઇડ્સ, રાઈટ? એટલે આ પાછું તમારી બુકની અંદર શેર કરેલું નથી. નાઉ this figure belongs to cholesterol, and there are many times this figure is getting asked into the competitive exams. So important છે આ ડાયાગ્રામ તમારા માટે. Do remember this, right? એટલે આમાંથી એકાદું પાખડું કાઢ નાખે, 4 ઓપ્શનમાં એક એક પાખડું ક્યાંકથી કાઢ નાખે. એટલે ઓરિજિનલ જે સ્ટ્રક્ચર છે that you are supposed to remember, કે આમાં એકચ્યુઅલમાં આ સ્ટ્રક્ચર કેવું છે. અહીંયાથી આ કાઢીને અહીંયા મૂકી દે, અહીંયાથી આ કાઢીને અહીંયા મૂકી દે. સો યુ આર ગેટિંગ કન્ફ્યુઝ કે આ તો બધા કોલેસ્ટ્રોલ જ છે, ઓરિજિનલ તમને ભૂલાઈ ગયું હોય. સો ડુ રિમેમ્બર that way this structure of cholesterol. Okay, lipids part આપણે પૂરો કર્યો. With reference to sugar, that is the monosaccharide, એટલે કે કાર્બોહાઈડ્રેટ નો મોનોમર, right? Sugar, there are 4. Again I repeat, right? પહેલો જે આપણે જોયો અમાઇનો એસિડ્સ, બીજું જે આપણે જોયું લિપિડ્સ, થર્ડ જે અત્યારે શરૂ કર્યો sugar, and fourth what we are supposed to see later on would be nucleic acid, no nitrogen base. Fine. So when I comes to carbohydrate monomer, it is called either monosaccharide or sugar. One thing I already have clarified, it is also like lipid, made up of only carbon, hydrogen and oxygen, right? So second point, they are formed of carbon, hydrogen and oxygen. But એમાં રેશિયો ત્રણેયનો છે ને 1:2:1 નો છે. We already have discussed this point earlier, right? Sugar are very sweet in taste, you know it. Sugar is very sweet in taste. બીજું, it is soluble in water. પાણીની અંદર sugar નાખીને હલાવો એટલે મસ્ત શરબત બને, right? It is soluble in water, sweet in taste. So these are the characteristic feature of sugar. 2 characteristic feature. 1, sugar is soluble in water. 2, sugar is sweet in taste. Third characteristic feature, though it is made up of carbon, hydrogen and oxygen only, but the ratio between these 3 would be 1:2:1, and this is it about sugar. Sugar નું તમને આટલું જ આપ્યું છે બુકની અંદર, right? 2 examples what they have shared is, one is glucose molecule, જે તમને અત્યારે દેખાય છે. મારી પાછળ છે એ રાઇબોસ છે, એટલે એ તમને દેખાતો નથી, પણ મારી સાઈડમાં અહીંયા છે એ ગ્લુકોઝ મોલેક્યુલ છે. આ this is the structure of glucose what they have shown. બુકની અંદર પણ આ જ છે. તમારા બોડીની અંદર જે ગ્લુકોઝનું સ્ટ્રક્ચર છે એ આવું હોય. Usually glucose molecule would be represented like C6H12O6, 1 2 3 4 5 6. Okay, CHO and CH2OH. H OH. This is what chemical formula and chemical structure. Chemical formula and chemical structure of glucose. But actually, when it appears, what kind of structure appears into our body? It is cyclic structure, not this kind of structure. તો એ સાયક્લિક સ્ટ્રક્ચર બનાવવા માટે કેમિકલ બોન્ડ કોની કોની વચ્ચે બને? તો કે this one, first number carbon and fifth number of carbon. એ બેની વચ્ચે કોઓર્ડિનેટ થાય આ બોન્ડ, રાઈટ? તો આખું બેન્ડ વળી જાય આમ. So it will make a bond like this. આ ફર્સ્ટ નંબરનો કાર્બન છે, ફર્સ્ટ નંબરનો કાર્બન. આ ફિફ્થ નંબરનો કાર્બન છે, ફિફ્થ નંબરનો કાર્બન. રેડી? તો ફર્સ્ટ નંબરના કાર્બનમાં શું છે? OH. હું અહીંયા મૂકી દઉં આ OH. રેડી? ઓકે, ફિફ્થ નંબરના કાર્બનમાં OH હતો, આઈ રહ્યો OH છે. ઈ OH માંથી O આઈ રહ્યો અહીંયા. તો હવે H વહી દો, ઈ H હું અહીંયા મૂકી દઉં અહીંયા. એટલે આ પૂરું થયું, આ પાર્ટ આવી ગયો આમાં. ઓકે, આટલો પાર્ટ પણ અહીંયા આવી ગયો છે. આ બે પાર્ટ આવી ગયા આ સ્ટ્રક્ચર ની અંદર. હવે હું જાઉં છું સેકન્ડ નંબરના કાર્બનમાં. અહીંયા આ સેકન્ડ નંબરનો કાર્બન છે, ઈ આ છે સેકન્ડ નંબરનો કાર્બન. અહીંયા આવ્યો, આ સેકન્ડ નંબરનો કાર્બન છે. સેકન્ડ નંબરના કાર્બનમાં એક H છે, એક OH છે. ચાલો કરી દઈએ H OH. તો આ આખો કમ્પોનન્ટ આવી ગયો, ઇન્ક્લુડ થઈ ગયો સામેની ડાયાગ્રામમાં. હવે મારો થર્ડ નંબરનો કાર્બન આવ્યો, આ થર્ડ નંબરનો કાર્બન આવી ગયો. એમાં જોવો ને તો તમે HOH ઊંધા છે, આમ બાજુ OH ને આમ H છે, એટલે મારે OH અહીંયા મૂકવો પડે અંદર. હવે આવ્યો આ ફોર્થ નંબરનો કાર્બન, એ હું મૂકું છું અહીંયા. ફોર્થ નંબરનો કાર્બન H અને OH. હવે વૈધો આ H, ઈ H ને હું જવા દઉં છું અહીંયા. આ ફિફ્થ નંબરના કાર્બનનો H. આ ફિફ્થ કઈ કીધું કોઈ? હા,
OH અને H માં ડિફરન્સ શું છે?
એક પ્રોટોન છે, એક હાઇડ્રોક્સિલ છે. સિમ્પલ. એક પ્રોટોન કહેવાય H અને OH છે હાઇડ્રોક્સિલ.
એવું નહીં સર, CHO અને COH માં ફરક શું છે?
કશું જ નહીં, નથિંગ. CHO લખો કે COH લખો, બે એક જ થાય. એનો કોઈ ડિફરન્સ જ નથી. અહીંયા કમ્બાઈન છે. C અહીંયા O, આ જે કાર્બન છે સે ફોર એક્ઝામ્પલ કાર્બન, પછી આ ઓક્સિજન વચ્ચે આવે અને આ H આવે. હવે હું આ OH ને સિમ્પલ કમ્બાઈન ફોર્મેટમાં લખું તો આમે લખી શકું COH, અને આ કાઢવું હોય તો હું આમે લખી શકું COH ઓર CHO. કેમિકલી કોઈ ડિફરન્સ પડતો હોય તો આઈ એમ નોટ કેમિસ્ટ, કદાચ પડતો હોય તો મને ખબર નથી, બટ ધેટ્સ વોટ આઈ નો અબાઉટ ઇટ. આપણા માટે કોઈ ફરક નથી. કેમિસ્ટ્રીમાં કોઈ ફરક પડતો હોય તો આઈ હેવ નો આઈડિયા અબાઉટ ઇટ. બાયોલોજીમાં કઈ ફરક નથી પડતો. ડન છે? ઓકે, હવે હું ક્યાં હતો? હું અહીંયા હતો. આ એક રહી ગયું હવે CH2OH, એટલે હું સીધે સીધું અહીંયા મૂકી દઉં છું CH2OH. That's it. This is the figure what you have got in earlier slide here. આ છે. પણ એ કેવી રીતના ડિરાઈવ થયું આખે આખું મેં તમને કેમિકલી સમજાયું કે ઇટ ઇઝ ડિરાઈવ્ડ લાઈક ધીસ, રાઈટ? સિમિલરલી 5 કાર્બન ribose is given. So this is 5 carbon molecule which is ribose. This is 6 carbon molecule which is called glucose. રાઈટ 6 કાર્બન ને કહેવાય હેક્સોઝ સુગર અને 5 કાર્બન ને કહેવાય પેન્ટોઝ સુગર. So that's what the difference between these two. બેયને આપણે આગળ ક્યાંક યુઝમાં લેવાની છે એટલે both are given as an example કે બેયનો યુઝ ક્યાંક આપણે આગળ કરવાનો છે. આપણે ગ્લુકોઝનો યુઝ પણ કરવાનો છે અને આપણે રાઇબોઝનો યુઝ પણ કરવાનો છે. એક યાદી આપું તમને RNA નું ફૂલ ફોર્મ કોઈને ખબર છે? RNA નું ફૂલ ફોર્મ કોઈને ખબર છે? RNA, full form of RNA.
Ribonucleic acid.
એની અંદર આ છે જે ન્યુક્લિક એસિડ ની અંદર રાઇબોઝ સુગર હોય એને રાઇબોન્યુક્લિક એસિડ કહેવાય. રાઈટ? હવે સમજાઈ ગયું? સો આપણે યુઝમાં લેવાની છે લેટર ઓન. એટલા માટે આ તમને બે એક્ઝામ્પલ આપેલા છે. ગ્લુકોઝ બી આપણે આગળ યુઝ કરવાનો છે મોલેક્યુલને, રાઇબોઝ મોલેક્યુલને પણ આગળ યુઝ કરવાનો છે. And that's why both are exampled here. Right? So that's where I'm ending today's session, and we will be continue with the nitrogen base from tomorrow onwards. જ્યારે પણ લેક્ચર આવે મંગળવારે આવશે I think. Right? So till now, have a nice time. Enjoy your weekends.